Hello everybody, welcome to week 11 in Legal Studies 246, the legal environment of business, here at the UAB Collat School of Business in the summer of 2018. This week we are looking at agency law, and we are starting our look at employment law. We look at agency law at the same time as employment law because the agency relationship is most commonly represented in our lives by our relationship in the workplace. Here is the learning module for week 11. You can see that we have separate learning activities for agency and employment law, and we have a voice thread discussion board on how you have been an agent. There is a separate announcement that you can look at for the results of the second exam. Here are the learning activities for agency law, a set of PowerPoint slides and a narrated version of those. For employment laws, again, a set of PowerPoint slides and a narrated version, and there are some other. There will be a question in the question pool about how relatively stingy the United States is when it comes to paid maternity leave. As I said, the most common agency relationship is that between an employer and its employees. Sometimes an employer can call its workers independent contractors, and the distinction between that will be very important for you to know for purposes of the last exam. There are other agency relationships out there other than in the workforce, and we will be talking about those. I'll be asking you to tell me on the voice thread discussion board how you have been an agent in your life. Independent contractors versus employees. Many of the laws that are out there in the workplace protect only people who technically are employees, so that distinction is very important. FedEx and UPS take a very different approach in that regard. An increasing number of new employers are calling their workers independent contractors, but not this one. Take a look at this article where a fairly new company has decided that it's just better to call its workers employees. The law of agency is fairly straightforward. The agent has certain duties to the principal, that is, the employee, for example, has certain duties to the employer, like to get the job done, be obedient. And likewise, the principal, for example, an employer, has certain duties to the agent, common sense, pay the agent. There's a very important concept in agency law called Respondeat Superior, which exists in most so-called Western cultures, but not in non-Western cultures, such as in the Middle East, that says that under certain circumstances, an employer can be liable for the acts of an employee. That is, the principal can be liable for the acts of the agent, even if the principal was not present when the agent did something that created liability. Many people trace the source of the many laws that protect workers, particularly employees, today back about 100 years ago when there was a terrible fire at a clothing factory in New York City. Watch the very short video in the learning module on that. We have laws today that exist at both the federal and increasingly at the state and local level that set minimum wage, that set the rules on overtime. Very sharp distinction out there between President Obama, who felt more people should be getting overtime, and President Trump, who feels exactly the opposite. There are laws that protect us if we get hurt on the job. Those are called worker compensation laws. There are laws that protect us if we become disabled and cannot work. There are laws that protect us when we get old, and we will be talking about those, particularly the so-called Social Security laws. About 30 years we got another law that protects us called the Family Medical Leave Act that requires that employers with over 50 employees provide 12 weeks of unpaid leave to employees to care for themselves or for a family member. This is a very important responsibility that takes a great deal of time in an HR department. Ivanka Trump, daughter of President Trump, came in as an advisor to the president saying that she was going to work to get more laws that protect families and provide more leave. We'll see how she does in that regard. So far, I haven't seen any such laws. Unions are a very important part of the employer-employee relationship. There are laws at the federal level that protect the right of workers to form unions, and if once a union has been recognized to bargain on behalf of employees, it'll be very important that you know what the concepts shown here are: closed shops and right to work laws. Interestingly, as we will talk about, you might think of Michigan as being a very pro-union, anti-employer state, but they recently passed a very pro-employer law just a few years ago. The process of recognizing a union is highly, highly regulated, and we've had several union drives in and around Alabama recently. This is not an extra credit question, but we will be talking about a union drive up in Chattanooga at the Volkswagen plant. Finally, for this week, immigration law, a very important part of employment law, because many times employers would like to hire people who are not U.S. citizens to come into the country and provide services that they don't believe they can get here in the United States. President Obama thought that should be encouraged. President Trump thinks exactly the opposite, and we are in a period of transition now on that matter. Finally, here is the Canvas calendar. Note that the next assignments are due on Sunday night, July 29 at 11:59 p.m., including, very importantly, that VoiceThread discussion board assignment on how you have been an agent.